Love him or hate him, Donald Trump's money story is not a clean motivational poster. Some people see a self-made builder who forced his way into the biggest room in America's richest city. Others see a man who weaponized his last name, other people's money, and relentless attention. The truth sits somewhere in the middle. He did not start from nothing, but he did push far beyond the world he inherited. This is a story of ambition, ego, risk, collapse, and comeback, and how one person turned a family business into a global brand that refuses to disappear. Trump was born into comfort, not royalty. His father, Fred Trump, ran a profitable real estate business in Brooklyn and Queens, focused on practical housing. Donald grew up visiting construction sites, hearing about rents and loans, and watching deals being made. He could have stayed in his father's steady world of outer borough apartments and lived as a rich yet local landlord. Instead, he fixated on Manhattan, the island where skyscrapers double as trophies and a handful of names dominate the skyline. Staying in Queens meant security, while crossing the river meant importance. Choosing Manhattan turned privilege into pressure. Every move beyond his father's territory would either prove he belonged with the city's power players or expose him as a pretender. That choice to chase a bigger stage is where the real story begins. In the 1970s, New York looked glamorous from afar but fragile up close. Crime was high, the city flirted with bankruptcy, and many once great hotels and offices were half empty. Trump saw discounted assets in the most visible property market on earth. If he could pull off a major win in that climate, it would vault him beyond the shadow of his father. The decaying Commodore Hotel next to Grand Central became his main bet. Reviving it required three aligned pieces: a tax break from a nearly broke city, a partnership with a major hotel chain, and financing from lenders unsure about a young newcomer. If any part failed, the project could have pulled his operation under. Instead, the renovation went through. The building reopened as the Grand Hyatt, and Trump placed himself at the center of the narrative, framing the turnaround as proof that he could rescue pieces of Manhattan others had written off. Most developers stay in the background and let their buildings carry the message. Trump did the opposite. He turned his surname into a logo and pushed it everywhere, on towers, hotels, casinos, golf courses, even an airline. That branding worked like invisible leverage. The more places his name appeared, the easier it became to sell the next project. He was not only offering floor space, he was selling belief in a formula. Put the Trump name on the front, and customers, media, and money will follow. The trade-off was clear. When your name is the brand, you do not get to hide from bad news. A problem in one casino or hotel does not stay local. It splashes across every building with the same letters on top. Trump accepted that risk because the upside was scale. In the rising tide of the 1980s, his bet on visibility looked smart, even as financial and reputational leverage began to stack up. The 1980s celebrated people who thought big and moved fast, and Trump fit that era. He expanded into Atlantic City casinos, bought and refurbished properties, acquired a jet, and filled his offices with marble and mirrors that television loved to show. He published a negotiating book that sold well and became a familiar media guest. Borrowed money let him control assets that would have been unreachable without heavy leverage, and as long as visitors filled the casinos, hotel rooms stayed booked, and the wider economy held up. The structure worked and reinforced the image of a man who always landed on top. Yet the more obligations he stacked up, the more sensitive his empire became. A downturn in tourism, a shift in interest rates, or a drop in property values could turn comfortable leverage into a heavy weight. By the turn of the decade, those stresses began to converge. The same strategy that had made him the face of 80s wealth now threatened to push him off the board. In the early 1990s, the cracks turned into breaks. Atlantic City earnings sagged, parts of the real estate market softened, and Trump-linked companies faced massive debts. News stories detailed missed payments and looming deadlines. Bankers who once saw him as a star client gathered to calculate possible losses. Casino and hotel entities entered bankruptcy processes. Projects were trimmed or abandoned. Complex loan agreements and personal guarantees meant trouble in one corner of the empire pulled at the rest. For many, this level of overreach ends the narrative. Trump argued his way into a different outcome. In negotiations, he insisted that the Trump name still had commercial value, and that throwing him out would only damage the properties further. Enough lenders accepted that argument to restructure key debts, extend terms, and keep him as a visible figure. He gave up assets, endured public criticism, and saw his standing shrink, but he stayed in the game and learned that his real asset was the brand itself. After that brush with collapse, Trump leaned harder into his image as a product. Rather than owning every hotel or tower that carried his name, he increasingly licensed the brand to other developers. Local partners provided land, money, and financing. Trump added design input, management agreements, and the right to put Trump on the front and in the marketing. If a licensed property struggled, local owners and banks took most of the financial hit. Trump's downside was mainly damage to his reputation. His upside was fees, a share of revenue, and a growing map of branded locations. His name now functioned like a fashion logo, stamped onto projects worldwide, even when his own capital was small. He supported this shift with books and appearances that framed him as a survivor who had faced disaster and come back stronger. The comeback story gave emotional weight to the brand and made buildings feel like chapters in a longer saga, paving the way for the next step, turning his business persona into a television character. When The Apprentice debuted, it moved Trump from business media into prime time. The show presented him as the ultimate boss, seated at the head of a long table, judging contestants and firing the weakest each week. The format exaggerated corporate life, but it burned a clear image into millions of minds. Television scaled his reach far beyond any single tower. Viewers who knew nothing about New York real estate now knew his voice and mannerisms. Speaking fees rose, licensing deals multiplied, and products carrying his name could trade on the emotional connection built through the show. By the time his television run slowed, the Trump name had become global and polarizing. Constant attention, good or bad, became fuel for later ventures, including his leap into politics. Trump's story is not a simple tale of pure self-made success, and it is not just inherited money dressed up in gold paint. He began with advantages, used aggressive risk to leap into Manhattan, built a personal brand that multiplied opportunity, then nearly lost everything when leverage turned against him. His recovery relied less on rebuilding a traditional property empire and more on understanding that, in the modern economy, narrative and image can be monetized like assets. When your fortune is tied to your persona, every win and every mistake happens in front of an audience. Attention brings deals, but it also brings scrutiny and division that never fully fade. Trump's journey from a family business in Queens to global fame shows how ambition, ego, and risk can create both opportunity and chaos. You do not have to admire Donald Trump to learn from his financial journey. It is not a neat rise, but a messy arc of turning a family business into a public persona, using debt to rise fast, surviving a crash, and then shifting to a model where the name often matters more than the hard assets underneath it. Do you see his rise as inspiring, alarming, or somewhere in between? Tell us in the comments who you want us to break down next, and whether you want more billionaire origin stories or deep dives into other controversial fortunes. And if this kept you watching, make sure you like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next money story. Thanks for watching today.